appearing. It was very dramatic. It's always been part of the Roman psyche, this tremendous theater-going aspect of society. And the Jesuits were the masters at controlling it. Music was an important element in most of their plays. And Mozart's father was in charge of one of the Jesuit theaters, and Mozart, at the age of 11, wrote his first musical piece for Jesuit theater. These were Jesuit writers. Mozart was a high initiate Freemason, and his task was to boost Jesuit theater with his music. You must admit, his music is compelling. Dramatic performances were prohibited or limited in many areas when the society was banned, and ceased altogether in 1773 when the Society of Jesus was temporarily suppressed. Jesuit theater disappeared off the stage of history. Hello? Really? The Jesuits were gone. So the Jesuits couldn't do it anymore. The Jesuits had to find another vehicle in order to do this. But wouldn't it be nice if you could create some front organizations, and then nobody would know that it was the Jesuits behind it, and everybody goes and thinks, oh, this is wonderful stuff, and eats it up like crazy. Had they found something else to take the place? Well, let's go to a modern Jesuit webpage, and let me take my bottle out the way before it irritates me even more. And this is the Jesuit webpage, www.jesuitcp.org. Jesuit Theater and Jesuit Arts. You can't take it with you, rehearsal calendar. A little bit more from this webpage. For almost 500 years, theater has played a vital role in the curricula of Jesuit schools. Today in Dallas, Jesuit theater builds on that tradition by offering a broad range of opportunities for students. Drama troupe is a group that goes out from school to school and educates school children in this kind of drama. When I was professor at my university, they would have all kinds of dramas performed at our school, and today I know that some of the teachings there, which vexed me exceedingly, come from a particular source. Jesuit support these activities was broad curricular offering, including theater, arts, etc., etc. Now, embedded in what was called ratio studiorum, which means rationalism, taking the place of Bible thinking, that was part of Jesuit schooling. The courses interlinked with spiritual exercises to intensify the experience thereof. So there were massive things which worked on your psyche so that you would have an experience which was supernatural. Now, Jesuit priest Athanasius Kircher contributed powerfully to Jesuit theater as a sensory experience when he developed an instrument called the megaphone, the megaphone, of which today I'm using the microphone. And then Kircher went on to invent broadcasting. He also fathered modern camera theory by creating an instrument which was called lanterna magica, magic lantern. And with a powerful light, they could project images. Today, sitting faithfully here, projecting this image, is a product of this Jesuit's great invention. The American cinema's early subject matter to capture the popular imagination was the cowboy. Now, cowboy movies were some of the first movies that were actually created in the United States of America. But who had introduced cattle ranching to the United States in the first place. Did you know that the entire cattle industry in the United States was started by a Jesuit by the name of Kino? Very interesting. Eusebio Kino, whose statue is one of two representing Arizona in the U.S. Capitol building, was a Jesuit professor from Ingolstadt College in Bavaria, which is the same college where Adam Weishaupt, who founded the Illuminati, was Jesuit professor. So the Jesuits started the cattle industry, and then they came up with a great idea of making movies from the cattle industry, and all the great actors involved were, of course, all high Freemasons. Whether their name eventually was John Wayne, or whether their name was Frank Sinatra, or whether their name was whatever, they were all high Freemasons, used by Jesuit theater. Okay. And in these movies, they brought in a morality based on good and evil, because the bad guys always lost against the good guys. And this is what people came to see. But the question is, was the morality ever based on the Bible, or was it a reality and a morality based on human perception of what is good and evil? You see, the second one is the case. After World War II, during September 1957, Pope John the 23rd gave Jesuit theater even broader horizons with his encyclical Miranda Prosus, looking ahead. And the Pope wrote, "Many must be brought into closer communion with one another. They must become socially minded. These technical arts, cinema, sound, broadcasting, television, can achieve this aim far more easily than the printed word. The Catholic Church is keenly desirous that these means be converted to the spreading and advancement of everything that can be truly called good, embracing as she does the whole of human society within the orbit of a divinely appointed mission." How sweet of him. She is directly concerned with fostering of civilization amongst all peoples. John the 23rd wrote this, urged pious national film reviewing officers to be entrusted to men that are experienced in cinema, sound broadcasting, and television. And at the same time, he says, we urge the faithful, and particularly those who are militant in the cause of Catholic action, that would be the Jesuits, to be suitably instructed. All right, this comes straight out of the pen of the popes. Well, this encyclical was amplified with a decree that was called Inter Marifica, amongst the wonders. Now I want you to listen carefully to this quote from the Roman Catholic papacy directly. "It is the Church's birthright, it is the Church's birthright to use and own the press, the cinema, the radio, television, and others of like nature." Pope Paul VI. Now, excuse me, if you're going to own the press, the cinema, the radio, the television, and make provision for the future internet, others of like nature, then if it is her birthright, then how much of the press and the media does she want to control? All of it. Have you ever noticed that if you switch on your television and you want to see the news and you turn to CNN and you're a little bit bored because you want to see something else that you've just heard about, so you switch to BBC, and they're talking exactly the same thing as CNN, exactly the same news at exactly the same time. Then you get a little bit bored and you switch to Al Jazeera, and they're saying exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. And you switch to your local one and it says exactly the same thing. It's pure coincidence, of course, right? All right. So these means must be used for social communication. The quality of entertainment content was decreed in a section of Inter Mirifica, and they tell you how it must be done, etc. All right, it is the church's birthright, not only to control it, but to own it. But who owns it today? Isn't it all the rich Jewish cultures that own all of these cinema houses? Who actually owns them? Who actually controls them? And who writes what they write? And what is it that the mind must be prepared for? Because this is a battle for the mind. So we have to look into that before we can fully understand where the media is taking us. Because no matter which aspect you look at, even if they come from totally opposite aspects, it doesn't matter to them. CNN will be reporting it in one way. Russian television will be reporting the same thing in another way. Doesn't matter. Press TV, which is Iranian, will give you another viewpoint, but the issues are all exactly the same. And by these various mindsets, people are being channeled into thinking in one particular way. And if you don't understand the methodology, you won't understand the strategy. Now, this is just the Wikipedia piece on The Simpsons and philosophy. The Door of Homer. The Simpsons and Philosophy, The Door of Homer, this is a book that has been published on this philosophy of The Simpsons. Now you might think, The Simpsons, that's pathetic. Is it? How many millions of viewers do they have? Millions. Do you know that the writers of each episode get paid astronomical amounts of money? And did you know that the writers, virtually all, have either PhDs in philosophy, history, or mathematics? All of them? So what is behind the scene? For example, Simpson. If you add up numerically the value, it gets to 33. Now you'll say to me, excuse me, I think you're missing the boat somewhere, because in numerology, you take the letter where it stands. Let's say you use A, then the value would be 1. B would be 2, C would be 3, etc. Then how come S works out to 1 here? Some of them work out this way, some of them work out that way. So if you look at some of these characters, here you have a 33-cent store. The 33rd episode of the show, aired in season 2, was titled The War of the Simpsons. The episode features a plot that gives tribute to Ernest Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea, and features a battle for the ages between Homer Simpson and General Sherman. Let us quickly examine the numerology of Sherman. Sherman works out to 33. Simpson works out to 33. But what numerical system are they using? Because they're not using the normal alphabet numerical system. And if you do a little research, then you'll find out that they're using Pythagorean numerology. Now, Pythagoras was a Greek occultist who forms part of the Gnostic Medici learning today. And he was a Greek philosopher that eventually was deified, because man becomes deified, and all disciples who follow him were worshippers of the man. Now the Jesuits have a very similar philosophy. You all have to worship a certain man by being obedient to one certain man. And the numerology of these names is incredible, because Sherman works out at 33, Simpson works out at 33, they have a 33 store here, and it was the 33rd episode, etc., etc. And we know that the number 33 is very important in numerology and in masonry and all of these things. Now, I'm not going to show you all, because some people get upset when I show everything, but I'll show you a few. Now, one of the characters is always naughty, and he always has to do lines on the blackboard. And they always have either a highly mathematical background or they have a play upon words. And here's one case. I will not plant subliminal messages. But look how it's spelled. I will not plant subliminal mesagore. All right, I will not plant subliminal messages, which means he's going to plant subliminal messages. Now the Pope has just written an encyclical in which he asks for a total change in our in our attitude towards the environment. Is that correct? Who's the great champion of the environment? Al Gore. So these are going to be issues. By the way, there are many, many things which we won't discuss here, which are there subliminally. And then HDTV is worth every cent. HDTV is worth every cent. Now, obviously, if that's what he says in his rebellious little mind, that implants an idea in every little child that's watching it, and he wants the latest technology so that it can be blasted away by Jesuit theater. For example, this episode was aired in 1997, and it shows 9/11. And here are all the Masonic symbols, such as these over here. And this is just interesting to watch. The Pledge of Allegiance does not end with Hail Satan. What does this plant into minds? This is actual adult sitcom. So let's do a little bit of snooping and ask ourselves who controls what the world sees today. Well, if you go back to some of those earlier actors, here was Sammy Davis Jr. He claimed to be from the Church of Satan. But later he claimed to no longer be part of the Church of Satan. But he does have a certain Batman suit on here, which happens to be from the Order of Malta. So whether he says he's from the Church of Satan or whether he's not from the Church of Satan, either way it makes no difference anymore because he's of the Order of Malta. And here you see him discussing with the Roman Catholic Jesuit priesthood what should be done, because Lionel Richie is the producer of We Are the World. Do you remember that song? We are the world, we are the people, and everybody had to sing it across the world to bring about unity. So he's discussing this with Donald Monin, president of Jesuit Boston College. So what these people do is controlled behind the scenes by those who pull the strings. If you're not too convinced, let's carry on. If you look at the movie E.T. or Close Encounters of the Third Kind, we know that the papacy has officially proclaimed that they want to make contact with extraterrestrials for whatever reason. Probably to prepare the mind for a false coming of Christ. And here you have Simon Cowell, not ashamed to drive his little Masonic vehicle. Now, it would start raining now, wouldn't it? Do I have to raise my voice, or is it all right if I keep this tone? Because it gets quite interesting now. It's just information, but it's interesting information. When you look at the present day actors, if you want to do this, you don't have to. If you go into the web pages and you look at Masonic connections, occult connections, Facebook will tell you all, let's say virtually all of today's actors are in this guild. And they all have an occult agenda, which is being orchestrated from behind the scenes. Nicolas Cage is in many, many movies. For example, The Season of the Witch, or National Treasure, which is full of Masonic imagery, or the movie The Exodus. I mean, the director of the movie The Exodus went to go and see the Pope to make sure that everything is honky-dory. And his portrayal of Moses is the exact opposite of what the Bible says. They claim that Moses was the most arrogant person that ever lived, and the Bible says he's the most humble. So this is rather interesting. Or the kingdom of heaven. The main message of the movie is post-enlightenment opposition to violence carried out in the name of religion. So we have to look at that. Minds are being indoctrinated that violence in the name of religion is problematic. But again, I want to point you to something. All of this can be orchestrated by a super general who pulls the strings and uses the enemy to achieve his final objective. And the final objective of the Jesuits is to obliterate the Word of God and to get rid of all true followers of Jesus Christ. Because the devil hates Jesus. He hates Jesus. So this is an interesting enlightenment to the violence carried out in the name of religion, says Father Leo Lefebvre, a theology professor of the Jesuit-run Fordham University. Now, who checks the scripts for these movies? And what happens? The author of Revelation and the Religions and Violence, the Times then tried to reassert the film's group hug its status. The Reverend George Denise, a Jesuit priest and history professor at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, says that they studied the scripts of the Kingdom of Heaven and they say it's perfect when it teaches the greatest apostasy that you can imagine. If you look at a movie like The Count of Monte Cristo, then people end up in tears at the end of it. But in actual fact, the whole movie has only one theme. And the Count of Monte Cristo is none other than the Jesuit general. He ends up without the girl because as a Jesuit priest, he doesn't get the girl, right? But he was forced into exile. He loses everything. The Jesuits apparently were forced into exile, lose everything. But then he gathers all the riches and he regains everything back. Is that correct? So this is a Jesuit movie about the Jesuit general. And we're going to go into some little details here just now. Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Masonic symbolism in that, I'm not suggesting anybody watches movies, I'm just telling you this. I'll show you a little bit just now. Left Behind. This was a millions of dollars blockbuster. To do what? To further a false theology which was created by the Jesuits in the first place and to plant it in the minds of billions of people about the rapture and about the false theology that goes along with this philosophy. It comes out of the minds of Jesuits. It's Jesuit theology. It's the Jesuits who invented preterism, futurism, and Cardinal Bellarmine, the Jesuit, created dispensationalism, which is swallowed up hook, line, and sinker by all these evangelical churches today and preached as a fact from the pulpit with not one word of support from the Bible. So they're using these great actors and they're using the star status, and they will pay millions and millions and millions, just as they did under Jesuit theater when it was in Europe. They spared no expense. Why? Because they used the enemy's cartload. And by the way, if you think, as so many think, that it's actually the Jews in control, then they say it's the Rothschilds that are in control. It's actually not Rothschild, is not the name. The name is Rothschild, which means red shield. And if you look it up in the Jewish encyclopedia, it will tell you Rothschild, Vatican bankers. In the Jewish encyclopedia, Rothschild, Vatican bankers. So these Jewish organizations are Jesuit front organization. They're as much Jewish as the Pope is. Let's take a movie that was hailed even within our own ranks as one of the great movies of the portrayal of Jesus Christ. It is a diabolical, evil movie with a Gnostic, inverted philosophy, which is being sold to millions as the depiction of Jesus. I'm just going to show you one or two things here. The Passion. The actor himself, of course, also went to the Pope to receive the Pope's personal blessing in this regard. And it's not a surprise that Mel Gibson, who directed the movie, receives here an honorary doctorate at the Loyola Jesuit Marymount University for his efforts. And I've heard some of our prominent preachers saying this is the greatest movie ever, and it accurately depicts Jesus. It's an occult movie. It's a Gnostic movie. I'm going to look at a few details here. Zechariah chapter 11, verse 12. Then I said to them, if it is agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So they weighed out for my wages 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, that princely price set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. Who's it talking about? This prophecy in Zechariah, who's it talking about? Jesus. Jesus, the one who was rejected, right? So they threw the money to the potter. Okay. Then I cut in two. Is it this? Am I back? Can you hear me now or not? Okay. Then I cut in two my other staff, bonds, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. And the Lord said to me, next, take up for yourself the implement of a foolish shepherd. So Zechariah is enacting a prophecy. He first refers to Jesus, who is sold out and rejected by the Jewish nation. And then he says, take for yourself the implement of a foolish shepherd. So this is not Jesus, this is a foolish shepherd. Verse 16, for indeed I will raise up a shepherd in the land who will not care for those who are cut off, nor seek the young, nor heal those that are broken, nor feed those that still stand. But he will eat the flesh of the fat and tear their hooves in pieces. This is the foolish shepherd. So there's Christ, who loves them, who came and gave his life for them, and they rejected him. So because they rejected him, what do they get? They get the foolish shepherd. You don't want me? You can have the other one. So this is not Christ, but Antichrist. He will eat the flesh and the fat and tear their hooves in pieces. And then, verse 17, woe to the worthless shepherd who leaves the flock. A sword shall be against his arm and against his right eye. His arm shall completely wither, and his right eye shall be totally blinded. So whose right eye will be totally blinded and the arm will be withered? Christ's or the other one? The other one. All right. Now let's look at the movie. Here is Jesus in the movie. Jesus' arm is dislocated in order to make his hand reach the nail hole, meaning that his arm should be fully extended and straight at all times. However, on almost all shots of him on the cross, his body sags forward with his arm bent at an almost 90-degree angle. So in the movie is depicted with this withered arm. And his right eye, through most of the movie, is shut. It is blinded. So, according to the movie,